Welcome back to a Bevy of Bloods for the 2023 AFL season. In this week's episode, we kick off by going over the round one win against the Gold Coast Suns. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods.
Swans!
All right, let's kick off this season right by introducing my long-term Bloods brother, Noddy. How is 2023 treating you, mate?
Mate, fantastic now that footy is officially back. How good is it?
Oh, beautiful. It's so good to finally have it around, eh? Finally, after all this time, I'm bloody well waiting. Well, mate, let's kick off straight into the game details. So for last Saturday night, our beloved Sydney Swans defeated the Gold Coast Suns by 49 points with a final score of 16-14, 110 to 9-7-61. So, Noddy, what were your first impressions after that sneaky win?
Okay, first impressions were I was very impressed. I thought it was very impressive. But let me set the scene. I was down in Melbourne for a Bucks weekend, and I was the token Aussie, if you can believe it. The rest of the boys were British lads, and they were proper lads. They were very good value. But yeah, we had a really great time, had some pre-game nerves, but we ended up going to the Rising Sun Hotel, which is obviously one of the spiritual homes of the South Melbourne Footy Club and Swans. So that was a fantastic experience for me. Although some of the boys made the point that it probably would have been just as fun going up to the Gold Coast because we could have actually gone to the game and run amok on the Gold Coast. But it was fantastic nonetheless. We had a few beers over the weekend, and my voice is pretty rough.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you came from a Bucks party. That's what I can say.
Oh, mate. It was, can I just say, the weather in Melbourne, unpredictable as ever.
Oh, yeah, crazy. As always. We went there for grand final long weekend and beautiful sunny in the morning, and then looked like it was going to like Armageddon in the afternoon. It's just the way Melbourne is. I love it.
37 degrees. I'll tell you what, Melbourne, 37 degrees in Melbourne is not 37 degrees everywhere else.
No, it's 150.
It was quite mild. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, it was like almost cool. Well, everyone's like, oh, man, I wish I bought like a light jacket.
Right, okay, yeah. I've been there at 33 and it felt like it was 153, like dying. It could have been that level of the hangover, who knows? But
that's right. Yeah, it's always relative, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it, mate. Well, look, football was played this weekend, so let's
That's right. Let's get on to that. Yep.
Let's get on to that, mate. A strong win against the Gold Coast straight off the bat to kick off the season. Wasn't there some talk about a hangover, or are our kids just too young to deal with hangovers at this point?
I like it. That's almost a perfect segue.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, there's a fair bit of banter going on in the media, and that's been ongoing since the end of last year. Very quick to point out, the teams that lose grand finals by a big margin are typically, don't do very well the next year. And look, we should say, it's round one only. It's the Gold Coast, who are expected to do well this year. But it was funny weather, and we'll talk about that. But so we can't get ahead of ourselves.
That's
but
right.
I think as we'll go through, the way that we played footy looked anything but like we're suffering from a hangover or a hoodoo or whatever you want to call it. The other thing there to mention, Chriso, is bogey team. The Suns have been our bogey team, and I'll tell you what.
Got it done. Stewie Dew has been, since he's been over there, has had a pretty good record against us.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he just knows the plays and he just kind of, I think spending all that time down here on the horse, of course, has probably been helpful. But yeah, to get a win, I think everyone was nervous. Like if we lost that game against the Gold Coast, and again, is the Gold Coast expected to do good? Look, I've got them kind of pinching up for the top 8. You never know with the way their season goes and how others play. But what that could mean is that the media would have been a totally different landscape. But our kids, right, they played from end to end, every single position, not a single weak spot in the entire team, played superbly, despite it being probably the slipperiest and hottest and weirdest dewy atmosphere that we could ever imagine. So, yeah,
Absolutely,
pretty happy with
absolutely. I
that.
think it's a perfect point. They were as clinical as you could be on a hot and sweaty Gold Coast Eve, and even Rampy said, "Oh, he recalled that there was wetter weather, but it was certainly, you looked at it and it was pretty slippery, but we made the most of it, and we'll work through some of that."
Yeah, the pill looked like it dead set had detergent on it. The way that I looked at it, it looked really greasy. But yeah, look, super fan Sam, our correspondent down. I love it.
Special correspondent,
Special
Swan superfan
correspondent.
Sam.
Swan
That's
superfan Sam did the halftime review for us down up in the Gold Coast, and was superb, and really pointed out too that there was some pretty dewy weather down up there. It looked a bit rough, but it got it done. They got it done, and although it was slipping around, everyone was pretty clinical, as you said. So pretty happy with the way that it all went, mate. Look, I guess let's move on to some talking points: the good, the bad, and the stats. What were your good points? What did you see that came out of it that you're pretty happy with?
Oh, just off the top, mate. Our pressure was immense. We had very good composure in the greasy conditions, as we've already mentioned. Our structure was really, really sound, but that sort of supported by the pressure. And our avenues to goal were really, really exciting. And we can talk through some of these points here, but 12 individual goal kickers. You know who they were. 9 players getting 20 plus disposals. We had plus 24 tackles for the game, plus 55 uncontested possessions. All of these things speak to our pressure, our structure, our tenacity, and just how we went about it. And it was bloody good to watch.
It was a nice game to watch as a Swans fan. It was convincing. As you said, 12 individual goal kickers: Papley, Franklin, McDonald, Cunningham with 2. Mr. Dependable.
Getting it done.
Mate, the second half of his career is going to be as a forward. It's going to be awesome.
Going to keep Clark out.
That's it. He might do, mate. He might do. Stevens, Mills, McLean, Lloyd, Heaney, Haywood, Goulden, and Florent, all with goals. So that is a huge effort from all across the ground. And a couple of pretty nice ones along the way, mate. Errol's bomb from well inside that square, what estimated about 70, 75, maybe a touch over, was huge for a small boy. So
the little genius. He's so good.
He's looking the goods. And yeah, I think we're expecting a pretty good season out of him, eh? So
time.
Full on, mate. Look, some bad points though. What do you have on your stat sheet there?
It's obviously worth mentioning Buddy's bump, sort of one little knock on the night, but, Buddy plays on the edge, and, obviously is 36, and, he's however many seasons he's in, 18th or 19th, if you include the 2020 he didn't play. But, so he's but I mean, you could say he's lost pace, but he was so impactful in this game. Like, he started like just an absolute bull. As Hall said, he was charging at everything. And he kept that sort of theme for the night, and then eventually did an errant bump on Collins. And I think it's there. He's been given a week. So, that is, although, you could argue that he was probably going to have the week off anyway. So,
yeah, true.
Just with him managing the age situation and his body. But how about you, mate? Did you see any things that, could have been better, or?
Yeah, look, I think junk time goals are always a bit frustrating. As the last, 2 to 3 minutes, 4 minutes of the last, all the quarters, to be honest with you. Yeah. And in particular at the halftime break and at the full-time siren, we did have a lot of goals kind of put on us, or at least some points and some good movement by there. We do want to see the kids just work on throughout the entire quarter and the entire half and game. It's a small point to put, granted, given the scoreline is at 49 points our way, but something that you can't really let up. And teams have let up in the last couple of years, and our boys have come out and won those games in the back of the last 5 minutes of really drilling it down. Bombers and who else? The Cats last year. So we've done a couple of nice ones in that way, but we can't be expected to give up that many goals in the dying minutes of any quarter and expect to be competitive throughout the entire year. You're going to have some teams absolutely crush you. So that's one thing that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
One thing I did like, mate, and something that you're typically all over, is the ruck situation. We didn't win the hitouts, given that Wits were always expected to be dominant there, but it didn't make too much of a difference, did it? It didn't go out to advantage, is what I saw.
Yeah, look, I think that with lads not winning the hit out, that didn't really affect things. We had so much pressure around the ball. I mean, even when Gold Coast went forward, our next wave of players were there to come. We're going to talk about Ramps, who was just unbelievable. But yeah, look, I think that Laddams is. I think he ended up playing about 3/4 or 75% game time. And his impact was around the field. Some of his disposals were a little bit loose, but again, it was just all hands on deck. If anyone made a mistake, and not just him, we'd have players there going just as hard to recover that mistake. So I think in the conditions we've spoken about, even those players with good hand skills are tested. And I think Laddams typically has pretty good skills, handballing skills, and a beautiful left kick. But a few times throughout, there were a few loose carries and loose disposals. But as I said, it didn't really matter. I think that you had Hayden McLean and even Logan McDonald, and for a couple Heaney jumping into the ruck. So seemed to have worked it out with Reed. Not making the fitness test, and
with Hickey still being
and with
out
Hickey
as well.
still out, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think that we're going to be better for it next week.
Yeah, the year of the good lad. This one, we
That's
know
right.
that much. We're
Good
looking
lad.
forward to the good lad.
Yeah.
I saw some pretty tidy things out of him, I think, and in particular, some of the handballs were a bit errant, as you mentioned, but they were facing in the right direction. So he got himself his hands on the ball, and he was just like slamming it into a direction where there was a player there, maybe missed by a touch, but that's just going to sharpen up. And it seemed like he really knew where his players were. That's what I saw. So I was pretty excited about that. I was like, you know what? We're not far off from him being really ingrained into that midfield, and they're all kind of working out exactly where they need to be, and they get a good feel for each other as they play more and more games, perhaps with Hickey out for another couple of weeks. So, the ruck situation is obviously something really important to us. With something we're needing to sharpen up for some time. We got lucky with Hickey the last couple, but this year the lads needs to play, and he needs to definitely sharpen up. So looking forward to that. And McLean, as you mentioned, he did a good job, I felt. I think pinch hit, he got in there in the ruck, did exactly what he needed to do.
He was probably more. He probably challenged Wits a bit more than Lads did in individual hit outs. Although he came up against Casbolt and I think Chol a couple of times. But yeah, look, I've always thought he's a very decent forward ruck. But I mean, I thought he had a good game. You see the same way?
Yeah, I did. I don't see how he loses his spot unless, we know that Horse, when Reed is healthy, he's going to put him in no matter what. So depending on the matchup, it's probably less likely this year, given body's really kind of falling apart towards the end of his career. So I see McLean kind of really holding a spot unless there's a real reason why not to let it at the moment. I know Amadi played in VFL yesterday, despite I thought he was originally listed as not playing. I don't know if it was injury or give him a rest or something, but he did play in the VFL. So Zane Red and White pointed out at one point. So it's definitely something out there. So that both McLean and Amadi are going to be battling for spots out forward. But it seems McLean, I think, at the moment just has it over him for a number of reasons. The running, what he's done so far, hitting the scoreboard, he's done a bit of everything to keep his spot, I think.
Definitely, mate. And as we've spoken about, even though Wits and Rowell and Miller and Anderson did get onto it for patches, we led at every break of the game. We did leak a few, as you said, but overwhelmingly we had the stronger position, and that was probably on account of our pressure and certainly our defensive half pressure, the intercepts and stuff we'll go through soon.
Yeah, speaking of pressure, pressure off the charts. Was it 215, 219?
So I heard it was 2 billion, but yeah, who knows, mate? It's a mystery. Jules sent that that little Reddit thing through, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
There is some calculation to it, but we don't. It's beyond a human being being able to comprehend, I think.
You have to put the calculation into a rocket and send it into space, and then basically Martians that we haven't discovered yet, they compute it and then they send it back to Earth and be like, oh, the Swans pressure was 2.15. Awesome.
Yeah, for my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fans out there, we've got deep thought in the back of AFL headquarters that's just churning out these mad numbers, and we don't ask questions, we just stick to it. So,
You gorgeous little nerd.
yeah, thank you. Deep thought back there, dear Abacus. Yeah, he punching out these. What was is he? We're punching out these mad numbers, and we were off the charts. We were at I think it was 219 or 215, one of those odd numbers. It looked like that was one of the highest we'd seen for some time. I think we'd hit 230, or another team had hit 230 last year. So we were really genuinely above and beyond elite. So that was superb to see in game one.
This reminds me, I might just place a little anecdote in here from the Bucks
please.
weekend. We're at sort of a bar that had arcade games, and they had a punching bag game. And yeah, obviously the key to the game is to hit it as hard as you can and get the highest point you can. And the owner said they'd recalibrated it recently, so we're giving it a go. We're right hand, left hand, pretty much maxing out around 519. Right, those who could get 519 were deemed the champions. And this is basically what was happening. It would not go above 519. So this is basically what the Swans were doing. They were punching and punching and punching and getting right up to the upper threshold, and just obviously doing it on a footy field and not on the piss on a Bucks weekend, but
slightly different circumstances. Context, circumstances, but in the end, just champions, isn't it? You're suggesting that you're champions just as much as the Swans are.
Basically, that's where I'm going with that.
Okay, cool. I'll back that.
Thanks, mate.
Look, mate, favorite moments and missed chances. I'll kick off. I loved Papley's check side goal where he banana-nanaed it straight down the middle. That was a beautiful goal, and I think that was pretty early on in the game. I think it was a great start.
It was. Yeah. Even his second one was pretty special. The build up, like the soccer 1-2, and then Chad passed it to him. Then he kicked it on the fly. That was bloody awesome. But
Papley off to a good start.
Yeah, totally. Sure. And it's almost cliched now. Commentators saying there's no one in the AFL that enjoys a celebration more than Tom Papley. Yeah. But God love him.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, outside of him, all of his fans as well. And it's people who like it the least is everyone playing against him.
Definitely. So and the other one that you mentioned earlier was Errol's bomb, which just it was so good. I think we mentioned it again. Just lines it up, 75 out, and just one bounce skids through. And it's clearly deliberate, clearly calculated. He's just a little genius.
He's too good. He's too good for it. Was it third year player?
Yep.
21 maybe. I don't know. He's just he shouldn't be this damn good.
Getting the midfield minutes, and just looking so good. Just
getting some tackles in, mate. He's gonna be really getting it done. I think this year. I think this going to be a year for the ages for little Errol, mate. I'm going to give a shout out to the entire back line and just giving Gold Coast absolutely nothing. 100% disposal efficiency by Lloydie. That's wild. Tom McCartan shutting down everything that Gold Coast was throwing at them. Any ball that went up in the air, he just seemed to get there a bit better. Every one of our backmen were just fantastic at reading the play, getting to the ball when the ball was in a dangerous place, sticking to their man when they needed to. They just seemed to be reading the play, reading the ball faster than anyone else, any of their opposition. So really happy about that back line. And Rampy, we'll talk about Rampy in the Bob Skilton, and the A-Bob medal, not the Bob Skilton. Don't sue us, Bob. But in the A-Bob medal, we'll talk about Rampy in a sec. And he was just on absolute fire. And one particular stat that's pretty worthwhile talking about would be the 9 1%ers that he was pushing out there. He was not playing around for this game. He went out there with intent. So big game by our backline, mate. Anything you saw as well?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll add to that. It's unreasonable to think you're not going to get scored against at any point in an AFL game. There's going to be ebbs and flows of the game, as it's well known. As we saw at the end of some of those quarters there where we leaked a few. But apart from that, we were just overwhelmingly solid. As you've already mentioned, there was Rampy had cut it off, Paddy had cut it off, Tommy had cut it off, Blakey had cut it off, and then it would feed out to, Campbell had a good game. There was Ollie running off the halfback. Just the whole team works so well together, and we really, really just It was a very, very impressive performance. So
Yep.
I'll just back that up. And I will say the other end of the ground, I think Hayward's impact was huge, and his pressure was fantastic, and that obviously helped our forward half structure. He had a couple he'd want back, I think, in terms of accuracy, and then one hit the post. And if they're the things that stop you from getting in the coach's vote, so be it. But yeah, I think he had a pretty good game as well. Just going back to Errol, because I don't think we touch on him in a second. So just want to read out Steve-O's example of how hardworking Errol is. Just got to find it. Sorry, mate.
All right.
Fill the air with some of your wisdom.
Well, while you're there, I was actually going to bring up something about the defensive effort by the wingers, and in particular Dill Stevens, who had an absolute stellar of a game. He was marking up someone, and a halfback, around the center, a halfback went sprinting around the marked player. And in previous seasons, and I guess the first half of last season, Dill would have been flat-footed, would have been head shaking, not knowing which direction to go. Do I stay on this man? Do I follow that guy? What's going on? Looking a bit headless. He had no hesitation at all at that game on Saturday. As soon as he saw that, his eyes started and he took off running. That was the only option that halfback had to move the ball on. And Dylan shut it down. And it's just a great indication that his defensive game has been really worked on, seems quite solid. And I think that's a huge reason why this year is going to be massive for him. So just the general defensive intent by the entire team, I think, was superb, really important for us.
Definitely, mate. I found that little thing I was looking for. So
beauty.
We're going back to the first quarter, and we're working. The time is working its way down to 0, as is on the broadcast method. So 6 minutes and 35 seconds. E.g., Errol Goulden wins the ball just inside forward 50. Gold Coast force a turnover from pressure on the handball. 6 minutes, 21 seconds. Errol Goulden wins the ball in the centre. Will Hayward drops a mark from Errol Goulden kick. Gold Coast turn it over, quick kick inside 50. Another 15 seconds. Pass, 6 minutes and 5. DR, so I'm guessing that's Dane Rampy isolated in the D50. Errol Goulden gets back, wins the ball and clears D50 long to Chad Warner. So in the space of 30 seconds, he's gone from forward 50, he's gone to the middle of the ground and then to the defensive 50 and had a telling impact on every play just to get us out of conceding points. Just unbelievable. Thank you, Steve-O, for that. It just highlights just how wonderful a game Errol had.
Yeah, not even at 21 years old, and seems to be all over the ground, knowing exactly where to be when he needs to be there. Yeah,
very wise
super wise head. Well, look, let's not dart too much longer. Let's get straight into the Bob medal. The A-Bob medal is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton medal. So we give points out to the best players in a 3-2-1 order, tally it up, and give a prize out at the end of the year. Typically, we just send like a case of beer out to one of the players. It never makes it there. They normally knock it back. But we're trying really hard to make sure that these players get known. So
we don't let it go to waste, though. We drink it on their behalf. Like
we look after that. We look after it. We make sure we recycle. So the 3-2-1 points go to 3 points to Warner, 2 points to Rampy, and 1 point to Dill Stevens. So Noddy, do you want to kick off with Dill Stevens? Sorry, no, with Warner, with the 3 points to Warner.
Oh, look, is this is yet another warning? Sorry, warnering.
No, nice.
Boom tish. Look, I don't know, mate. Like, what do you say? Like, I think this is part of it. I was probably a little bit concerned that after his huge breakout year last year, that a lot of clubs would have done their homework on him, and they would look to stifle his impact, but they didn't do any of that in this game. He was so strong on the ball. 30 touches, 14 score involvements. I think he had a couple of behinds. Did he score one? I think
3 behinds. No goal. 3 behinds.
Okay, so if you kick 3 goals, 30 touches, 14 score involvements, and some of these other, however many, like 5 tackles or whatever it was, I mean that's probably up there in the Brownlow votes for round
100%.
1.
You have to imagine. So
you have to imagine.
He had 8 tackles. He had, mate. So
8 was it? Good God.
8 all.
I was
8 tackles and 30 disposals, and if he had the 3 goals, collecting all the biscuits from Brownlow. But mate, like you said, he's putting the entire AFL on Warnering.
Yeah.
Love it. Sounds
Definitely.
good
I mean,
already.
there
Rolls
was,
off the
I think,
tongue.
I can't remember what quarter it was. It might have been first quarter, but there was a hard ball get. He collects it. And I think Ben Long in his first game for Gold Coast tries to tackle him, literally just bounces off him. Like he couldn't get an arm on him. His core was too strong. It was like he had a force field on. Like he just bounced off him.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable the strength he has. And it was just, and it was just exciting to see him combine up in the middle, with Parks and Rowie and Goulden and even Lads and Papley running through there. It's very, very exciting. It's looking very, very promising.
Look at the top tacklers for us too. Like Rowie on 10 tackles, then Warner on 8, Mills on 7, and 6 for Parker, and then 5 for Goulden. So like that midfield is basically churning them all out. No wonder the pressure count was so damn high. It was driven by the guys straight out of the center. And if you're going to put Chad Warner and you're going to tag him and you're going to stop his run, stop his speed, stop him getting around, fine. But he's still doing damage with the tackles on you anyway, right? So, yeah, the fact that it's maybe a little bit bigger as well this year is probably helping him bounce off a few of those tackles this year. Let's find out.
Yeah,
huge,
mate. It's
all right.
Yeah, very exciting.
Number 2, so 2 points out to Dane Rampy, mate. Talk to me. What do you think about Rampy?
Just game for the ages.
Yeah,
like just how there was a lot of talk of whether Rampy, how he'd go this year. Obviously, the background is, how is Gould fitting into the team? They brought Francis in. Do we have enough tools already with the McCartan boys and Blakey? And so Ramp's been the third tall, who's obviously got a glittering CV as a lockdown defender on the opposition's best key forward. If he loses a bit of pace, how's he going to go? And he literally wound the clock back. He was everywhere, making all the right decisions and just all over it. I mean, Tom, what were his stats? They were good for a midfielder, basically.
Mate, there were 25 disposals, which I eyeballed to be the equal 7th of his entire career of 218 games or something like that.
Does that mean he's had 5 more games where he's gotten more than 25 disposals? That's incredible.
Yeah, I think he maxed. I think the most I saw was 30, which 30, was a junk game. It was like the last game of the season against the Hawks when they weren't very good. So that was he just turned it on that day. But either way, 25 disposal for this game. He's keeping his spot. No one's going to be able to take that spot if he keeps doing what he does.
If he keeps doing what he does, I'm bringing him onto my fantasy team. Because that bloke,
wow, yeah,
he had 100. I almost did it on the bus home today. I was like, do I? It's probably too early. But like if you can hold his form, unbelievable. So just how nice did it feel knowing that Ramps was there doing what we know Ramps can do?
Yeah. And considering that halfway through last year, I was writing him off. Like I put my hand up. I was suggesting that, look, I think time has come. We need to find a replacement. He needs to start getting less minutes, even to the point where I was suggesting for this year, I was like, well, I hope he doesn't stick as captain. It's going to be hard to knock him down if he's not playing so well, if his body's not holding up. Now, touch wood, hopefully his body holds up, but his intent and his skillfulness and his reading of the game is still absolutely elite, as we can see this week. So, yeah, a lot to say, mate. Dwayne Russell.
You go.
Yeah, I was going to say Dwayne Russell on Instagram said Rampy made that ball look dry. It was greasy conditions out there, and he made it look like the ball was, had a, what do you call it? What's that grippy stuff that you use? Velcro? Yes, go with Velcro.
Yeah, Velcro fingers. Yeah, he did, mate. He did, and they weren't wasteful disposals. Really, they were purposeful. And I will say that I thought he combined really well with Dill Steves. Dill the Thrill Stevens on the wing there. Yeah. Just linking up nicely there, coming through from the halfback on the wing, sign of things to come. I thought that would be a nice little combo if they could build that up throughout the year.
Yeah, Dill rolling back. Well, that's a great segue, mate. 1 point to Dill the Thrill Stevens.
God, how good does it? Okay, we know he's a running machine.
Yep.
The knock on his game has been his body. But he's obviously worked on that. The guy is a specimen, right? Is basically what we talked about the other day. He's little bit taller than Warner, and almost as heavy.
Yep.
But he just looks so much more comfortable at the level now. And I did bring him into my fantasy team tonight
Oh,
because
solid.
that guy is going to let it rip this year.
It was last year that you mentioned he was your the player to watch for the season.
Yeah.
And you weren't far off. And you were right, I guess. Like at the second half of last year, he was getting better every single game. But that step up from the last game last year, no, let's ignore the grand final. None of them played particularly well. But the last game of last year against the Pies, where he was quite good, and all the games prior to that, leading up to it, he was very, very good. He took an enormous step up in this game. Like he was getting around everywhere. He was looking very confident, like I mentioned before, positioning, being aware of when he needs to be to make the most amount of impact, the linking up with the backmen, being smart enough to go all the way back and also being aggressive in offense. He was a very, very superb wingman. He keeps that spot. I don't see how we take it away from him. There's no one remotely close to
Lock
having the
it in,
skill set
mate.
that he's
Dill
got.
the
Like,
Thrill is
yeah.
in for the kill. Like this is
Ooh.
Dill. This is his year. Like
Yep.
he is okay. I'm not saying he's going to go all Australian, but he is going to be what all going well. Safety first.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to be one of our best players this year.
Yep. I
Like
agree.
and how good is the fact that he can kick a snag. Like he almost kicked the second one. It almost floated. He just missed it. I think Heaney marked it missed a mark on the goal line. But if you've got a mid, a winger that can get his hands on it 20, 30 times and kick a couple of goals, but also run a half marathon and help out and every single line, and not just for numbers, but like really playing his part.
Yep.
Oh man. I mean, they're saying like shades of Jared McVeigh. I'm not seeing that quite yet. I get the link like with the high pick and our
Yeah.
highest pick since him.
Yeah.
But
And body size and
body
shape and everything.
size,
I kind of get it.
slightly different, players, but could be. I mean, here's a question: Did Jared McVeigh start off on the wing? I honestly can't remember.
I don't think I can remember that either. I remember, him rolling around some slightly different spots and
I
then
know it was in the
half
middle
back
and
and
then finished it up back,
yeah,
just because his IQ was through the roof.
yeah, and then just the
Obviously,
general back there. But yeah, I don't know. Stevens just got these mad skill sets on that wing that we're obviously pretty happy where Juzzy's kind of performed out there, and he was like started off hot and kind of cooled off a little bit, and then came good towards the end of the year, and started off this year really well. We're not going to mention him too much this week because there's too many players to talk about, but yeah, Dill solidifying that right wing. I can't see how we hold anyone else off it. Like it's too damn good.
mate, it's just an awesome situation to find ourselves in. And and hopefully he can keep it going. It's going to be consistency now. He's going to have a few up and down weeks, but if he can continue to build on the performance he gave against the Suns, very, very good things to come.
And you can see why he was so high pick, and you can see why Dean Cox and Horse have spoken about him a bunch of times in interviews,
Yeah.
and they've always been backing him. Even when he went back down again, they've been saying all the right things. Dill's there. He's got the goods. We've got to sharpen up some skills. They never had a doubt. I felt like, and it's They obviously know a lot more than us halftime pundits, and they really coming through good. So I think there's not a single Swans fan out there in the world that's not excited about Dill's year for this year. It's going to be pretty fun to watch. Any other players, mate, that just caught your eye worth a mention? Although they're not getting any biscuits for the Bob medal, but just some general notice.
Oh, mate, I don't know. We touched on Errol. Parks was good. Rowie was good. The whole back line was amazing. Papley obviously was great. Heaney was everyone had a good game. I thought there wasn't one player that had a bad game.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that either. I felt it was strong across the board. I was happy with Logan's movement as well. These big leads dragging guys off.
Great.
Yeah, he looked very good. It's without Buddy for this week. We'll talk about that in just a second. I think
we haven't even mentioned Callum Mills.
No, we haven't. And arguably Millsy had an incredible game, and we haven't even mentioned him. Like that's he had his typical Millsy game of just doing absolutely everything everywhere and being the perfect player.
Yeah,
And yet we didn't give him any biscuits. So
there you go.
he's too full. He's full from last year, mate. He doesn't need any more
That's it. We'll
biscuits.
put Millsy on notice. You better step up your game, mate. Otherwise,
Yes,
you won't get in the
that's
Bob
it. Back
medal.
VFL for old Millsy now. Oh
No,
my
not quite.
God.
Well, that's a good segue, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. So let's go straight into the post game. MRO and injuries. Millsy
Hmm.
injured his right hand. It was about half time, put on a glove, a nice black glove, and then was pretty ginger with it. Didn't high five any of the guys with that hand, didn't handshake anyone at the end of the game with that hand. Precautionary, or I guess if it was really bad, they wouldn't have him out there, mate. What did you see?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that if it was truly bad and required surgery, he'd have at least a couple of weeks off. Was this the carryover from the preseason injury? Because what was it that he didn't play the blue scratch match, and I thought it was Papley had some back stiffness, and then Mills had something. Maybe it was related to this. You would think there might have been some correlation, but yeah. I mean, you could see visibly it was affecting him. He wouldn't high five with his right hand, but he still played an amazing game and kicked that really really awesome captain's goal. But
Yeah, it seems like
yeah,
he suffered I've got here, excuse me, a finger injury during the Brisbane game. So
right.
perhaps that's
So it was
carryover.
okay.
Could be like a dislocation or a bit of a small fracture that's not causing any harm, but just a bit ginger and just got to keep off it maybe. But wearing a glove I find interesting, or maybe just to get more grip if it's like, like the index finger or something. It's hard to get your hand around the ball, so you're kind of wearing a glove to help you out. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs, but it
Mm.
seems like he's okay because they let him play the whole game of a game that we were winning convincingly. So I don't see any danger in it. I hope not anyway.
Yeah, I can't imagine it just seems like one of those ones that I think they'd roll with probably until the end of the year, and then he might require some surgery. But um, yeah, we'll have to follow that. But um,
All right,
let's
we'll
have
get
a,
some guys into the locker room and ask some questions. We'll get some spies in. The other injury we noted was Sam Reed last week, not kind of leading into the game, came up with a bit tight. I think it was his hammy or his
yeah,
quad or
glute,
something.
glute
Glute.
apparently.
There you go. Yeah. So he sat out, which means that we probably have a tour missing, which is where McLean kind of stepped in. He
Mm.
looked good. Do you think that if Sam Reed is healthy for this week, does he come in?
Um, it's a very good question, mate. I think you probably roll with the same team that played so well against the Suns.
Mm,
Um, I don't know. I don't know if he comes. Although, yeah, does he come in for Buddy, or
yeah,
do they
perhaps.
do they go short and bring Roberts on and then Sheldrick as the 23rd player,
Mm.
or do they bring Stretch on to have some legitimate ruck depth, but or support? Yeah, it's a good question, mate. These are all definitely going to be front of mind for Swans Brain Trust. Um, yeah, I don't know. What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, it's all centered around the MRO. We saw the Buddy hit. We spoke about it a little bit earlier. What did Buddy do? He kind of like ran over the ball. Kind of,
He
he
threw
definitely he
he
went to
threw an
hit.
elbow, basically
He threw an
shoulder.
elbow. I
Yeah,
don't think he meant to hit the guy in the head, but he
he's done
did.
that before. He's been a bit lazy before.
Yeah, it's a
He's
bit of a
definitely got a
lazy
track
play.
record of it.
Yeah, and
Um,
it was a no doubt. We saw it. We're like, yeah, probably a week. Like it was clear. It was intentional for the most part, or at least
mm,
careless at the very least.
mm.
High impact. Sorry, in the head. So whatever that determination is, and so it basically was the prime example for a 1 week suspension. What I don't get though, and okay, firstly, let me ask you, Noddy, do you think 1 week was fair for Body?
Look, probably not. I don't know. I guess you got to compare it to. It's round one, right? And they
Mm.
don't seem to link it back to any of the incidents last year. But any other big hits in round one, mate?
Yeah, well, okay, this is where I guess I'm heading with it. So, Cosy Pickett got 2 weeks for him leaping off his feet, headbutting Bailey Smith clear in the face. Bailey Smith went down like a sack of potatoes. and thankfully got up straight
got
up,
up pretty quickly. Yeah.
didn't walk away. No, what do you call it? No head injuries, no time off or anything like that. But it looked like that was high contact, intentional. And then anything that was failing there is that Bailey Smith didn't walk off. So do you think 2 weeks is fair for Cozzy Pickett?
Probably not. But this is everything we talk about every year. Like
Yeah.
they seem to. The thing that stuffs it up is the consequence. The how badly the person who is on the receiving end is affected.
Mm.
But we always make the point that it should be the action that you're trying to stamp out, regardless of how badly, regardless of the consequence. So based on that, it doesn't seem fair that it's only 2 weeks for Cozzy and only 1 week for Buddy. But
Yeah.
if that's where they've landed, then that's it. But it just doesn't. It sort of goes against the narrative of having head safety of the utmost priority.
Yeah.
Especially that who was it recently? It's going to bug me now.
Well,
There's a class action.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
God,
bugger,
who
that's
was
going to
that?
kill me.
Yeah,
But yeah, class action is underway for
yeah,
concussion in the AFL. I mean, if this is the week where you're going to tell the supporters and tell the entire league up front, I wouldn't have been surprised if they gave Buddy 2 weeks.
yeah.
Not necessarily
Same.
because I felt that he deserved it. I felt that 1 week was fair. I think anywhere between a fine and 1 week was fair, depending on how tough they wanted to be. But if they were to give him 2 and then they gave Cozzy 3 and they gave this other guy 3, I could have understood that because I would have been like, all right, they're making a stand. It's important. It looks good for the lawyers, looks good for media. It's all one big game. But to give Cozzy the 2 weeks for something that was quite clearly intentional, left his feet, absolutely drilled Bailey in the meantime. Meanwhile, the Crows player, Shane McAdam, who absolutely cleaned up the GWS player, which you go online and watch it. You could hear it on the TV. It was bad. He went off for concussion syndrome to checks, and he went to tribunal tonight. Got 3 weeks for his effort, and I don't understand. As you mentioned, if you were to watch those two back to back, it actually looked like Cozzy's one was worse. It was less of a bang bang. It felt like there was more intent on it. And nonetheless, just because someone didn't come off for concussion syndrome, then you've got yourself a 1 week discount for basically being lucky with the player that you hit or the circumstance you hit him in. So the MRO is right off the bat straight going to just kicking themselves in the friggin' head with inconsistencies straight away. In round 1, we're playing this game already, and I just don't understand how we haven't stamped this out in the AFL yet.
Mate, I agree that Buddy, as I said, has done this in the past. I'm just looking at this McAdam one. Hang on, I have to see who went down. Number 10 in for the Giants. Don't know who it is.
Yeah, I don't recognize number 10, to be honest with you.
That was a pretty big hit. Yeah, that was a massive hit. So, I mean, they're sort of saying if you want to get rid of these actions, you've got to get rid of the bump. And that's sort of, I can see, for the history of it, getting rid of one of the, historical, one of the things that made Aussie rules is getting rid of the hip and shoulder, the bump. But I can see why some people are grappling with that, but they are probably the old guard. And if, it's probably easier to get rid of that action than deal with class action. So
that's right. Yeah.
Financially, as they are very focused on the bottom line at Docklands there. But I don't know, mate. It's we could probably talk a lot about this, but it is what it is. It's they've all been given their respective weeks off. How it affects us, as we've said, Buddy may have been given a rest anyway. Although Hawthorn at the SCG, we'll talk in a moment, would have been pretty tantalising. But with him out, we'll just have to see how Horse and Co. How they go with the team.
Yeah.
But it certainly is exciting.
I did see a article came out tonight from the Sydney Swans where Dean Cox mentioned that, made comment that Matty Roberts was playing very well. And the intent was that he was going to be playing more. He came on quite well in the Carlton game, the preseason game, and played pretty decently. He looked like he was totally up to speed with the game for this week. So it sounds like even with Dean Cox mentioned there, it looks like he's going to get some game time, most likely this week, I'd say.
So he came on, wasn't he? He was the tactical sub. Was it for Laddams?
Yeah, I think it was. 'Cause I didn't see Laddams come on for
Yeah, I think he missed the
chunks of the
whole
time.
fourth quarter, but I'll have to double check that. But yeah, he certainly is looking like he's got a lot more time on the ball.
Mm,
His decision making has always been good, but it's the pace, getting used to the pace of the game, and he seems like he's ready to really contribute, and that's exciting. Another left footer, another hard worker,
mm,
which is just bloods through and through. He fits the mold, so. Yeah, as we said last week in the preseason review, he seems to be just a couple of steps ahead of Sheldrick in
mhm.
terms of what the Swans want. But you can imagine probably Gussie is not too far away either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they go.
You've also got a Marty probably putting up his hand and wanting to have a crack at it.
Mm,
So he might be another player if we wanted to go tall to slide in, although I think it's pretty. I don't know. If I were to put any money on it all, I'd suggest that Roberts gets the spot and someone like an Amati or a Sheldrick, as you mentioned, gets themselves the emergency or the tactical sub or whatever they're bloody calling it these days.
mm, mm.
So that's where my money would be going.
We'll find out on Thursday, mate. Wait with bated breath, as
Bated
always.
breath. All right, so the game ahead, very quickly. The Hawks at the SCG on Sunday, first home game of the year. Yo, it's like a 140 bounce. I'm pretty sure, just about. The Hawks were smashed pretty convincingly by the Bombers by 59 points. In terms of their form and their spot in the ladder, I predict that they're probably battling for a wooden spoon for this year. They've decided to go young early.
Mm,
They've got some good players,
mm.
but I think I don't know how much. I don't know how much to expect of them for this week, mate. What do you say to that? I'm trying to be very careful with my words,
No.
given the
It's
Bombers incident for last
it's
year.
it's early days. It's early days, and I think you're right. They're young, so I think that Mitchell's approach this year is to get games into the young core, and they're going to be a prospect in the next couple of years. But I think they'll be competitive. They've still got really good players, senior players in the team. So yeah, I don't think there's ever really an easy game against Hawthorn for the Swans. They're just another one of these clubs that we always seem to butt our heads against. So yeah, it's
Mm.
going to be. Look, I'm just stoked that footy's back at the SCG. It's going to be awesome. Sunday
Yeah,
Arvo, can't wait for it, mate.
I'm so pumped.
I'll be ready to drink a beer by then as well.
Yeah, well, that's you might have gotten over it by that point. I can't wait. It's Sundays at the SCG. I don't know how people feel about that generally, but I love a Sunday day game at the SCG. It's favorable to me too because I don't live too far from it, and it just sets up the week perfectly. In particular, if we get ourselves a win. So, yeah, super happy, mate. I'm super happy. Do you have any predictions or thoughts about the game before we move on?
Oh, look, I think we yeah, look, we just got to come out with the same intent, and regardless of the conditions, we just come out and then, yeah, put the pressure on the ball, and hopefully, things the rest will work itself out. If we can keep a similar amount of avenues to goal, that would be fantastic. But it's really just going to be off the back of our hard work, and you get the feeling if we can come out and play with that style of game, that there's been real resolve in the off
Mm,
season. Obviously, Horse has been on the record saying, the grand final happened 6 months ago. We addressed it at the time, but we move forward. We move forward like we do every week, whether we
mm,
win or lose. We always try and get a little bit better each week. And if the message is to work really hard for each other, regardless of whether you're going well or you make a mistake, then I think it's going to serve us well because we've got really good depth. We've got a really great young core, and we've got awesome veterans who know how to win.
yeah.
So yeah, look, if we can just come out with that spirit, hopefully we get the job done. Otherwise, we'll just see how we go in round three.
Yeah, that's right. I think my interest is the Sicily situation. I think Sicily's a very, very, very good player.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
excellent. If he's in the back line, I wonder who's going to match up with. If Buddy's not around, does he match up with Logan? If so, this is Logan's been sitting on a very good player and a player that is a skillful player and can run really well, clever to boot, and loves to get under your skin. No one loves to just annoy the opposition more than Sicily and potentially Papley. So it'd be if they do match up, I think that'd be a real test for Logan. I would like to see how that goes for him as a bit of a learning
it'd be
experience.
interesting because it's obviously he can peel off and take a lot of marks himself, Sicily. So
30 touches last week.
Yeah, I know, mate. I've got him in. I've left him too late. I'm getting him in. Don't worry, he's one of the other ones. The Hawks actually have a lot of young players, as we've said. So there's a couple throughout the fantasy teams, mate, because they're midfielders like getting their hands on the ball. But I think what they're missing is goal kickers. They had young, what's his name, Mitch Lewis, and I think Kazishka is the guy there now. Obviously, Bruce. As you pointed out, he's still there. Gunston departed for the Lions, so they've lost a real experienced forward there, but they're still going to be dangerous because they're coming off a loss and they're going to be hungry, right? So, it's not an easy game for sure, but it's going to be fantastic being back at the SCG.
At the footy. Mate, one last thing on your side. What's happening?
Mate, I'm just going to go back to some of the points I made about this Bucks weekend. Okay, so to the squadron of British lads who peppered me all weekend with incessant anti-AFL shit stirring, pull your bloody fingers out, boys. I tell you what, I will say in your defense, though, singing Hey Macarena every time a goal was scored. Because they see the goal umpire put their fingers out and they'd be like, "Hey, Macarena." That's credit where credit is due. That was legitimately funny. Regular O'Reilly Rabbler, so one of our regular home season mates, JT, said it took him, and he's obviously English himself, took him about 5 games to be totally converted, right? You got to go to 5 live games and then you will never look back. But I reckon I could get the rest of those boys there a little bit quicker with my dulcet tones explaining the subtle nuances of prior opportunity into your ear holes. So I need these boys to come to at least 2 live games, sink some delicious furphy with the sun setting on their CG, and then tell me you don't like it, you cheeky bastards.
I think the sun setting over the SCG on a Sunday afternoon during football on a beautiful autumn's day, few things are better.
It's what we live for, mate.
It generally is.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm going to finish off by just reminding everyone we actually managed to interview Adam Spencer. So 2016's number 1 ticket holder and just a general Bloods fan. He's also been the MC and host for many a Swans dinner and event, including the grand final dinner for last year, where he had a very stirring speech and made sure the boys knew that we loved him despite the scoreline. So he was a very entertaining character. And he absolutely ripped into the entitlement of the VFL and the Victorian teams. He absolutely ripped to shreds the Cats, the Hawks, and all of that stuff going on there. Was defending the expansion into the Gold Coast, or at least being angry at the fact that the Gold Coast gets given these players, then gets peeled off them, they get stolen, and then end up playing for Richmond and the Cats, and then go on to win grand finals. Yet in the meantime, Gold Coast gets nothing for the effort of being effectively the nursery for the AFL. He's a very eloquent, very funny guy with a lot of good things to say. So strongly recommend jumping on the Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get the good podcasts like this one and listening in. A very entertaining interview, mate. So I guess with that, it takes us to the end of the episode. So on behalf of a Bevy of Bloods, we want to thank you very much for listening in, and make sure to tune in every week as we go through the games previews and reviews as we've done today. And make sure to follow us on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you would want to see us. And we're always posting as much fun, goodness as we can get out there. But until then, up the Bloods. And can you, Swannies?